It is the newest, even newer.
Everything else is obsolete.
I just bought this one! What the? 3D.
Oh, wait. Oh, 4D TV? Stupid.
You got the wrong TV, silly head.
The new buyback program. You buy it now, we buy it back when the new thing comes out.
That commercial has always stuck with me for years. Mostly the little girl running, going, "You bought the wrong TV, silly head," and it's always stuck with me because doesn't it feel that way? I think they just hit the nail that bigger, better. You buy a 720p TV, the next day it's 1080, the next day it's 4K. The thing they missed some numbers there. Now they're talking about 5K and 8K, and all of a sudden your new is now obsolete. And this actually creates in us this growing discontentment, doesn't it? And maybe I'm the only one, but for me, I like the new. I like tech stuff. And it's funny how as we move forward, we also move backwards. And now, Dave, as you say, I have my Dick Tracy watch. Right, I take phone calls on my watch. So a company that makes watches obsolete brings them back, and we're just constantly moving forward. And so years ago, Best Buy introduced their buyback program, and it's not offered anymore, which maybe lends to they couldn't even keep up. So, but with this growing discontent. And I guess it makes me wonder, and maybe it does for you, how do we find contentment in a world of discontent? And how do we learn to be content, especially in light of verses like Philippians 4:19? It says, "My God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus." Well, he's meeting all my needs, right? So what all does that include? We should start asking that, right? And so as we look at this, and I know I'm going to be teaching to myself tonight, right? Because discontentment or contentment is something I struggle with. Discontentment haunts me. I always want newer, bigger, better. What I buy that's awesome one day isn't the next, and maybe you can relate with that. And so I've just got a handout here, Jeremy. If you just pass this down. There's pens on the table as well. And we're going to be in Philippians again. And so our first lesson we were in Philippians. Now for our last one, we're going to be in Philippians, and looking at specifically Philippians chapter 4. Philippians chapter 4. And so, as we look at this, I just want to remind, for you who have been with us from the first lesson to now, what Paul is writing. Paul's writing to a specific group of people about a specific issue. Every single one of his epistles or letters is around that specific group of people. Usually you can get who he's writing to by the title of the book, and then to read the whole book to kind of understand what he's writing about. So a specific group of people, specific issues. In the case of the Philippians, Paul is actually sitting in prison, and he is writing this letter to the church at Philippi. And he's writing them because they collected an offering and brought him, and then sent a guy down named Epaphroditus to give him money to help him out. Because in those days, where now you have cable TV, a gym, and 3 meals a day, if you're in jail, in those days, Roman prison was not a fun place to be. Even if Paul was under house arrest, it was still been up to his friends and family, if he had it, to provide for him while he's in prison. So the fact that they bring him money is kind of a game changer for this. And so he wants to thank them for that. And so he ends up focusing on some 3 key issues. And you have the 3 big points of Philippians off to the left-hand side of your handout here. That Paul's encouraging the Philippians to have the same attitude Christ. And then he commends Timothy, who's going to send to him, and Epaphroditus, who's going to send back. And Paul then warns about false teachers who are entering the church teaching another doctrine, a different gospel. And then Paul encourages them to lay aside their disagreements they have and focus on the good news of Christ. Seems pretty relevant even for today, things we might encounter. And so you could focus on this. Number 1, that 3 big points of Philippians, that right teaching. Paul is focusing on right teaching. That there will be people that come in and try to teach something that's false. And so it's up to us to really to know God's word and be able to test what somebody's saying, even myself, to be able to test that and say, yeah, that actually seems right, what's being said, or no, that's not right. And we can hold each other accountable in that. So number 2, so it's right teaching, right thinking. This idea of how I think about the people around me, how I think about situations in my life, and then finally right actions, how I treat those around me. And so he's encouraging. And Philippians is known for a lot of verses that we would call maybe coffee cup verses, bumper sticker verses. And we see a lot of those. And today we're actually going to be looking at one of those. I happen to have a few tattoos, and one of my tattoos is Philippians 1:21 on the inside of my arms. And so when we look at Philippians, we realize like he has a strong bond with these people. And if you want to see the background, you can look at Acts 16. It talks about the start of the Philippian church. And you have a woman named Lydia, a slave girl who's demon-possessed, the Philippian jailer, all of these that are an established church now. What is going on in there that he's now writing back to them, and he knows them as friends, and he's seeing their faces as he writes. This is not an impersonal letter. This is very personal. And so the first time that we met together, we talked about right actions in our life and how we're called to live differently, if you remember. I doubt it. But today we're going to be looking at right thinking and right thinking. And so as we talk about what it means to be content in a discontent world, that we as Christians are called to be content. What does that look like? If we know that God is providing for our needs, what does that look like? And so we just want to look at this. So let's look at Philippians chapter 4, starting in verse 10. And we're not going to look at a lot of verses tonight, just a few actually, to really make our point. And so we're going to be looking at 10 through 13. And so in this too, we'll see one of Paul's most misquoted verses. And we're going to talk about what it actually means. Hopefully we'll get to the bottom of what he's actually saying on here. So let's read, will someone read Philippians 4:10, just verse 10.
I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it.
Yeah, so he's sitting, and keep in mind where he is. He's sitting in jail, writing this letter, and he receives a gift. And he almost sounds, I don't know if you catch it, he almost sounds ungrateful, actually. And so it sounds a lot like maybe he's saying this, and I'm quoting here from a scholar who says, I'm glad that at long last, after waiting all this time, you finally decided to think about me. Of course, I realize you were meaning to do it, you just didn't get around to it. Right? So we could read it with this sarcasm, which has actually turned a lot of people off from Paul. And I used to say that even before I really had read him and understood him. I go, I don't think I'd want to be Paul's friend if I was around, because he seems to have it all together, and then he seems to have it all together and then rub it in your face. And that's not what's happening here. He said actually Paul's rejoicing that they decided to give. That they decided, whatever reason maybe was holding them back, maybe it was just poverty, and that they decided out of that to give. And he wants them to know that it's not the money that's making them happy, it's the attitude of their giving that makes them happy, or makes them happy. So let's look at verse 11. Will somebody read verse 11?
I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances.
Man, doesn't that sound nice? To be content, whatever the circumstances. So if Paul isn't rejoicing over receiving money, what's he celebrating? Because it sounds like he's saying, I hope you understand, however, I don't really need the money. So, and I just said it, what's he celebrating here?
The fact that they wanted to.
Yeah, the fact that they wanted to give here. Yeah, he's celebrating their willingness to be connected to Paul. And keep in mind, where's Paul sitting?
Jail.
Yeah, not a trick question. Where's he sitting? Sitting in jail, right? And it's, I mean, even some of that stigma hasn't left, right? That we're going to partner with somebody who's in jail, right? Like that's a big deal even now. If you're saying, oh yeah, that's our missionary, he got arrested, we're sending him money. You're what? Right? Now we might say, oh, it was for sharing the gospel. That sounds good, right? But what if there's trumped up charges against him, but we're still supporting him? It was a shameful thing to say, hey, we're going to back this guy even though he's sitting in jail. They're making a public statement here that we support Paul. So there's the encouragement there. So again, last time we were in Philippians, if you remember, we talked about not grumbling or complaining, if you remember. Do you see anything in these two verses here that shows that Paul is trying to move himself away from an attitude of complaining?
Well, he says he rejoices greatly.
Okay.
Right out of the gate.
Yeah, right out of the gate. So can you use verse 10?
Yep.
So read that verse for us again.
I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it.
Yeah, so he's choosing a right attitude, right? A right view of things. And so what's he choosing? He's choosing to rejoice. Despite where he's sitting, despite what's going on, he celebrates. And so he's rejoicing. And then, Dave, can you read your verse again? I know you just threw food in your mouth. Sorry. Somebody read verse 11 then, since Dave threw food in his mouth.
Now that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content.
I am to be content. Okay, so again, how's he distancing himself from grumbling and complaining in verse 11?
He says, whatever situation, I've learned to be content.
Yeah, so he makes it clear, right, that, again, it's that reframing their thoughts. I mean, how many of us need this? Because how easy? Is it easier to focus on the bad or the good? The bad. Yeah. And it's interesting. So when we do interviews at Chick-fil-A, we actually start with, tell me something good that's happening. And you'd be surprised. I realize an interview, but they're not expecting that question. But how many of them cannot redirect after that question? They have to sit there and think. And even had a lady today. She sat there for a while trying to figure out something that was good. But I bet if I had asked her, tell me something bad that's happening right now, she'd be able to start rattling it off. And isn't that the case for us? Why do you guys think that is? And I don't know if there's a right answer. Why do you think it's easier to focus on the bad than on the good? Any thoughts? I don't know. I think maybe the bad sometimes is more drama, right? Maybe there's more attention to myself for the bad. Oh, let me tell you this, what happened, right? The bad tends to sometimes have more of a story than the good. Maybe we're more connected to story than we
I think you
like to admit.
expect everything to be good, so then when it doesn't happen,
Yeah.
I think it sticks with you.
It's a good point. So we expect things to be good. Maybe and taking things for granted then, right? So so we're not focused when things are good until they go bad, and then we realize, oh, things actually were good. Right? I mean, it's every country song, like, oh, if somebody told me these were the good old days, right? That's one that's out right now. I think about those at times. Like, if you think about the times that you were maybe in high school, rolling around with friends in a truck, hanging out, right? Star of the basketball team, those kind of things that happen. And you couldn't wait for the next thing to happen, right? Because that comes to a discontent. That maybe we could learn how to be content in every situation, no matter what's happening, no matter if we're sitting in jail, right? Or that we're free. And that's where Paul's going to lead us. That no matter what happens, he's content. He's learned what it means to be content. So let's look at verse 12. Will somebody else read verse 12 for us?
I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so in this, for my Bible, I actually have, I've learned the secret circled. I've learned the secret, because the thing is that Paul talks about secrets and he talks about mysteries at times, and the cool thing is he doesn't leave you like, what is it? He actually tells you what it is. So he actually has this secret knowledge that he's about to share. And I was just curious, so I Googled secret knowledge just to see what came back. It was deep, dark, black internet stuff. But what came back was over 560 million different results. 560 million results just for the two words, secret knowledge. Why are we so fascinated with secret knowledge? What is it that makes us interested in this? And actually, the Greek word there is talking, he's like, I've been initiated into the mysteries. And I love a good conspiracy theory, right? That sounds good. Like, I've been initiated into mysteries. Like, oh, I have secrets. And the thing is, he's about to tell us. And so if somebody says, hey, I've got a secret, what do we do if somebody says, hey, I've got a secret? Yeah, what is it, right? And I lean in. Oh, yeah?
Depends who it is.
It depends. That's true. Smart man. The cop over here is like, what is it?
He's ready.
Let's go.
Don't ever fall for that again.
Yes. No, and that's where I guess I look at that and I think about like my 4-year-old Elliot, and he'll say, oh, can I tell you a secret, Daddy? Oh, yeah. You know? And then it's something so silly, right? But how close does he get? Really close, right? Hope you don't have a personal box, right? Really close, and he says a secret. Maybe it's so inaudible because he's talking, either hushed or screaming into your ear, right? But he's right there, and we lean into it, and we're paying attention. And you have all my attention right now for this secret, and I think that's where Paul's driving us here. He says, "Well, I've learned the secret." All right. So anytime Paul talks about secrets or mysteries, perk up. All right. So we want to perk up. We lean in. So pay attention to the secret. Are you ready? Verse 13, somebody else. Billy, I think you're up, man.
I can do all this through him who gives me strength.
All right, so what's the secret?
The strength comes from Jesus.
Yeah, the strength is from the Lord on this. So, so how is Paul able to accomplish this contentment? Where does it come from?
Christ.
Jesus.
Yeah. So Paul makes it perfectly clear in verse 13 what he means. That his sense of contentment doesn't come out of personal resources, the money that's coming, but it comes from the one who is strengthening him. And I think for a lot of us, we think, man, if I just had...
I believe I did that.
Did you flip that? It'll be all right. We'll get it later. But I think a lot of us think, if I just had, right, more money in the bank, if I just had a different job, if I just had a better marriage, if my kids would just listen to me, if my boss wasn't so stupid, right? We think all these things, and we can't learn how to be content. And Paul tells us, no, the secret of contentment is it's not you, but who?
Jesus.
But Jesus. And so that's how he can write from Roman prison, wherever he was sitting, and he can say, hey, I've learned how to lot, learned how to little, I've learned how to be hungry, I've learned how to be well fed. Abundance and plenty, I've had all of that. Blessing and suffering, I've had all of that. But it doesn't matter what happens around me, I can still be content. And I can be content because of Jesus. And so, this is the verse that gets misused a lot, isn't it? So are there limitations to I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength? So does this mean that if I really try really hard that I can be the next LeBron?
Yes.
Yes, no, right? Well, so we would say there are limitations to this then. So how, maybe this is too much, but have you ever seen this verse been misused in that context? How do we tend to misuse this? Any thoughts? I think maybe we get ourselves in some stupid situations sometimes. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Like pay off all that credit card debt. Right? There's things that, and I've been there. This is the things we get ourselves in. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. No, so what's Paul talking about? I can do all these things through him who gives me strength. It's talking about specifically about what?
Being content.
Being content in all situations.
Yes, accepting you're not LeBron James.
Yeah. So take that example.
You should accept.
Oh, I really should accept that. I really should accept that. Jeremy and I played 21 one time, and I said, let's keep playing, because he had 21 and I had 0. And I said, let's keep playing, you'll keep keeping score until I get to 21. And I think it was 150 to 21 by the time we got done. So I'm an awful basketball player. So no matter how much Christ strengthens me. What?
I said, you let him score 21 points.
Yeah, he was done. The competition in him. He actually, by letting me score points, won. So, but now I've lost track where I was. But with this, that there are going to be times in our lives that I have to learn how to be content. That hey, I'm probably not going to be good at basketball. I can keep practicing and maybe get incrementally better, but that's not where my gifting. I'm okay with that. Right. So now it's learning how to be content. I will never be LeBron James. Now I'm going to be content in that. Right? Because realize that your gifting and your skill set, there are people that would kill to have that. That if you can put yourself in that shoes, man, I wish I was that great of a leader. I wish I was that great of a speaker. Man, I wish I was a great mechanic. Man, I wish I was a leader and do that. People want that, and we don't realize it. Why? Because, wish I had that. And we're discontent where we are and realize that there are people around us that wish they could have our gifting and skill set. And so learning how to be content in that, the good or the bad, whatever comes. And so I just want to diagram this a little bit for you. And so if you're a nerd and want to write it down, you can. So I just want to show this. So blessing and suffering is going to come into our life, right? So that's our top box here. And this normally, right, that if good things happen, who do we usually think?
God.
No. Yeah, it's only a dinner, right? Come on. I just worked so hard. And that's it, but Tiffany comes home, it's like, oh baby, you've been working so hard, I'm so happy for you, you got this, whatever it was. And so we can look at ourselves. But then when bad times happen, maybe then we blame God, right? But then we say, I'm going to pull myself up on my bootstraps, I'm going to make this happen. And ultimately, all of us as guys in this room, what does our wife say? Well, why didn't you ask for help? Why didn't you ask for help? Here we go. Well, I didn't think about it. I thought I had it. And so our first thing here that we tend to lean into is self-sufficiency. I'm going to jumble it up so you can't see I can't spell. So self-sufficiency. And so blessing and suffering come, and we're looking at self-sufficiency here. And so the problem is that ultimately if we are looking at ourselves, there's a limit to how much we can actually accomplish, isn't there? Eventually you have to sleep. Eventually you're going to break down. If you don't sleep, then you get anxious, and then you get anxiety, and then you end up in the hospital, and then you end up on medication, and then you end up, and it's this nasty cycle, right? So that blessing and suffering come, self-sufficiency, and ultimately leads to discontentment. This realm of discontentment, and then discontentment comes, and then we enter into more blessing or suffering, and then we just repeat this cycle. We repeat this cycle over and over. Does it make sense? And I don't know if this is perfect, but it's just to illustrate this. The other option here, if we take Paul's idea that blessing and suffering is going to come, good or the bad is going to come, and that he actually, rather than moving to self-sufficiency, he says something that he has a secret. And so this secret, as he moves through the secret is actually Christ's sufficiency. So Christ's sufficiency. And that this could lead us to, drum roll, anybody guess? Contentment, right? That this leads us to contentment. So it actually takes getting outside of ourself to reach contentment. Because the good or the bad comes and we say, oh, if I had just done this better, maybe that would have happened. Or, oh, I did that so well, therefore this happened. And we're going to be looking at ourselves for this. So is it fair, and you can disagree with me and that's fine, you can be wrong, but is it fair to say that this is a cycle that you're stuck in, that if somebody's in this looking self-sufficiency, discontentment, that it's hard to get out of that? Is it fair to say that's a cycle? If not, that's fine. As I was kind of thinking about this and diagramming, I wrote this up about 4 different ways trying to think through this. And so I guess I'm just putting to you that without Christ, is it fair to say that we're going to end up discontent? Or can we say that non-Christians seem content and seem happy and just fine? No pushback? Okay.
I think for the most part, and that's hard to say, like a lot of us in here have been Christians for a long time, so
yeah,
you lose track of that. But coming from other people, I think that, they can definitely be discontent, and not having Christ in their lives is the missing.
Yeah, absolutely. So which begs the question that if we call ourselves Christians and we're experiencing self-sufficiency and discontent, what have we missed out on? The secret to contentment is Christ's sufficiency, right? That are we taking the time to figure out what it means to tap into that, right? Not to use it, but to be used by it. To understand that Christ has something more. So what does that look like to take his sufficiency into your boss's office, who's a bumbling idiot, right? Everybody knows. To ask your wife, we know you say that, right? What's it look like to take it into your marriage when it's struggling? What's it look like to take that into being a parent? What does it look like to take Christ's sufficiency into this? And I can't answer that for you. Right? That we have to look at that. That he knows in all situations, whether good or bad, hungry or not, right? I know what it means to be content. And the secret is, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. So it's not my own strength, it's Christ. What would change? What would change if we stopped tapping into ourself, which the world tells us to all the time? Right? All the self-help books, 12 steps to better you. Live it now. 12, it's always 12. 12 rules, 12 steps, 12 keys. It's always something more, right? And so we'll stand at self-help section at the bookstore or online, and we're looking and we're going, oh, maybe this will give me the key of what I need. And just tonight I was talking to a friend who recently started a church, and he's like, I've got this problem, I can't figure it out. I said, well, how much time have you spent complaining about it versus how much time have you spent praying about it? And I said it more kind than that. But that's the question, that in our lives, if we're far more easy to complain about it than we are to take it to Christ. And if that's the case, then I would say that perhaps we are tapping more into self-sufficiency. I'm going to complain about it, right? How do we identify it? I'm complaining about it rather than praying about it. So when I say that to him, he goes, well, I don't know how I'd pray about it. I don't even know what to do. I'm like, man, that just looks like a simple, Jesus, I don't know what to do. Right? And that's okay. That's okay. So it's interesting here. Let's read this 10, 11, 12, and 13 one more time. Somebody wanted to read that whole thing for us, and let's look at this. Anybody? Thanks, bud. Don't move, Jeremy. We got this.
Don't worry. I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I am not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me the strength.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Verse 11, 12, and 13 kind of reads like a parenthetical statement, if you're familiar with that. It'd be something in parentheses. All right? So he starts out in verse 10. So I rejoice greatly that you gave, because I knew you didn't have a chance, but now you gave me money. And then in parentheses, not that I needed your money, because I've learned whether or not anything good or bad happens, that I know how to be content. And the secret is, I can do all things through who gives me strength. Boom, then he moves on. There might be some assumptions that he's trying to correct that the Philippians might have. What do you think maybe some of those assumptions are? For a guy supposed to be their leader, sitting in jail, and he's writing back to them, saying, I'm actually okay. What do you think that's saying about the assumptions that maybe the Philippians might have had about his situation?
That he needed it?
Yeah, that he needed the money. Oh, if we don't get this money, right? Who knows what's going to happen? Right? So the assumptions it might be making is, it is really bad for him, and we need to help him out and do this. And if he's sitting there correcting, actually, I'm okay. I really appreciate it. And why, again, back to verse 10, why is he grateful? Because they decided to partner with him. They decided to partner with him. That's why he's grateful, not because he got the money. He's like, look, I appreciate it, but just so you know, I was fine with or without it. Imagine getting to that place. Somebody gives us help, we're like, look, I appreciate it, but I was fine either way. Right? I am sufficient in Christ and found contentment. And this is where I think for some of us have been to poor areas, and especially third world countries, and just been amazed at the contentment they have with the amount or the little that they do have. Like, there's no way I'd be happy with this. But they learn that, right? So maybe we learn to be discontent as much as they've learned to be content.
I think there's no doubt that we learn to be discontent because it's sold to us all the time.
Absolutely.
That we have to have this to be content.
Hence the commercial.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, you bought the wrong TV, silly head. Stupid, right?
Finally had that car or that truck.
Yeah.
So can you have
that'd be great.
contentment with discontentment?
Explain
And-
what you mean.
Well, okay, because I consider myself discontent in a lot of different ways. In the fact of, like, I'm always chasing a goal. I hit that goal. Now I increase that goal to where I'm always going after more.
Yeah.
But if I don't hit that, then I'm like, yeah, okay, I don't like that. I'm gonna try again to do it. But yet, I'm content with where I'm at. Like, I'm fine with what I've got.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would always call that like a healthy discontent, right? That I'm trying to strive to be better at whatever it is that you're trying to do. I want to be better. And ultimately, I'm trying to be better. Why? So that hopefully I can serve Christ better in whatever I'm doing, or represent Him better, or whatever it is. So maybe the goal too is like, hey, I want to get healthy, right? Something I'm not concerned about currently, but so I'm saying, I want to run a marathon, right? So now I'm gonna go run a marathon, but maybe I go, okay, knees a little weak, heart, who knows, anybody's guess, and I'd rather not die. So now my content is gonna say, you know what, maybe a 10K is good for me. All right, now 10K, now I'm incrementally, and I think those are healthy things. But it's not saying like, man, unless I do this, I'm a failure, and because what you're doing is reorienting your perspective. You're changing your perspective around what's going on. Does that make sense? And I could be wrong about that. I think there can be healthy goals that are set to accomplish what you're trying to do, and that's not wrong to do that. Anything else on that?
No.
Okay, yeah. So I think it's important to recognize that Paul was not upset about his imprisonment. He was grateful for the gift. That's not what was making him happy. The material isn't the basis for contentment. And so down at the bottom, you have the bottom line that when you feel deficient, Christ is sufficient. I know it rhymes, and rhymes are silly, but it worked for Dr. Seuss, it'll work for us. When you feel deficient, Christ is sufficient. I want to read a quick story, and then we're gonna. I got a few more questions. We'll wrap up. It says the farmer complained about the lake on his property that always needed to have the fish thinned out. The rolling hills made it more difficult for him to run the fence rows, and sometimes he couldn't even see his cows because he had so much territory to cover. At night it was so dark he found it hard to walk from the barn back to his house. So he decided to sell the place and move somewhere really nice. So he called a real estate agent and made plans to sell his property. A few days later he picked up a local paper looking for a new place to live. His eye caught an ad for a lovely country home in an ideal location, quiet and peaceful. It had soft rolling hills, a pristine lake stocked with bass, and classic barns surrounded by natural flowers and soft grass came complete with a wonderful herd of black Angus cows. It was just close enough to town to be convenient, but far enough out to be uncluttered by city lights, traffic, and noise. He read the ad a second and then a third time before realizing that the real estate agent had given her description of the place that he currently owned. He called her and told her to cancel the ad. He said, "I've changed my mind. I've been looking for this kind of place all my life." That it was a changed perspective on the same situation that changed this man. And just a fun story, right? So let me ask you, after all this, what advice would you give somebody that's found themselves to be discontent and cynical? What kind of advice would we give somebody who's coming to you and they're discontent, cynical about life, nothing's ever going to be better? What would we tell them?
Pray about it instead of complain about it.
Oh, yeah, that hurts. Yeah.
Short.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah.
But in a nice way, like you did the other
you're
guy.
right. No, you're absolutely right. That's just what I taught. Now I'm chastising you for that.
Yeah, I heard
Anybody else want to go? Give me right answers. They'll be wrong. What else? What advice would we give somebody who finds themselves discontent and cynical in life? What would you tell yourself?
What advice should we give, or what advice would we give?
How do you want to answer that question?
Sometimes they're two different things.
Answer either one.
Well, I mean, should. You've already, you discussed pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, you know.
Yeah.
My go-to would be suck it up, buttercup, you know.
Yeah, I think you've given me that advice before, actually.
I think
yeah.
I have.
Yeah.
So, not that that's always the most encouraging advice, but
Yeah. So is that your should?
that was my should.
What
Or
would
that was my would.
Would. All right. So what's your should?
Well, Well, I mean, obviously, that varies based on person as well, I
Absolutely.
guess. But in their current relationship with Christ, if they have one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that would be dependent.
Yeah. As I thought how I would answer that, I thought that maybe, and this is, again, preaching to myself on this, that I would say, man, I'm going to try to focus on what I do have rather than what I don't.
I think it's always, it gives you a different perspective, and you have to do that in order to see your property from a different viewpoint.
Yeah.
It's easy to get discontent, discouraged, and then go, oh, wait a minute, like, however bad your situation is, there's always something good that can be taken from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're still breathing, so
Yeah.
if you're still breathing, hey, that's more than something.
Yeah, cut your goal in half, right?
Yeah.
At least I'm breathing, right? I can't run a marathon, but hey. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's good. So let's look at this, that we all have areas in our lives that we feel need fixing, that we're discontent in. It's most of us look at categories like maybe our looks, our money, our love lives, whatever it is, there's something, and we're saying, hey, I wish this was a little bit better. But the problem is that maybe we're trying to fill the void with things of this world and not God, not His righteousness, not His strength, not His power. And so, for you, what are some areas in your life where you're feeling discontent? You don't have to tell me, but maybe you want to write them down. Just some areas you're feeling, hey, I'm feeling discontent. And then in those areas, do I feel more self-sufficient or Christ-sufficient in that area? And what would it look like to become more Christ-sufficient in that area? So if I think about it, that, man, I know, hey, for work, I'm feeling a little discontent. I wish something would change there. But you know what? I'm actually focused on me. That's the reason I get stressed out. That's the reason I'm freaking out and taking it home. And because I'm not looking at, hey, man, I'm glad I have a job. And I remember a time when I didn't have a job and I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills. Man, I'm so grateful for that. Why would that change that perspective if we took on Christ's perspective? So I want you to think about that. And finally, we can learn a lot from the example of the Philippians church, and they decided to enter into Paul's ministry, and therefore also his suffering, right, to partner with him. And they gave him a financial gift. And so I want you guys, and I do want you to write this down, because it's not so personal, but who is someone that you can pray for, meet with, or do something special for, to say you see them, and that you know they're suffering, you know you're here for them. And how can you enter into their suffering, especially as we come into this Christmas season? Man, it's hard. Think about that. I mean, Justin, you're sharing a story. People have nothing. And so, who's somebody you can enter into suffering with, to partner with them and say, hey, I see you. I'm here for you. I want you to write down their name, and then what you'll do and when you'll do it. Because I know, if you're like me, it won't happen unless I set a timeline and give myself a deadline for it. And do that. Any other thoughts as we close? Maybe a few seconds to do that and think about that. For us. Father God, we thank you so much that despite what's going on in our lives, that you are sufficient for us, and that you provide everything that we need. And so help us to be content in whatever situation we find ourselves in. Help us to trust in you, no matter if blessing comes or suffering comes, and to know the secret that you are our strength. And so we pray all these things in your name. Amen.